the great French Impressionist painter, created over 2,000 works in his lifetime, paintings that stunned the art world a century ago and gave rise to the very term Impressionism. Monet died nearly 70 years ago, but still speaks to us through his paintings. And from his letters and journals, we might imagine his voice, telling us of his life and his art, and the path that led to the beautiful gardens at Giverny.
My name is Claude Monet. I am an artist, a painter, and a gardener. I was born in Paris, France, on the 14th of November, 1840. When I was 5, my parents moved to the Normandy coast, to the port of Le Havre. My only interest as a child was in drawing caricatures. A local landscape artist noticed my drawings and encouraged me to paint. His name was Eugène Boudin. He invited me to join him on trips along the coast, where he painted beautiful scenes in natural light. Side by side, we set our easels in the sand. My first paintings owe everything to Boudin. He taught me that it was vital for an artist to retain his first impression of a scene, that when something is painted directly on the spot, it has strength, power, a certain immediacy of touch that can never be recaptured in the studio. But Paris was the undisputed center of the art world. If I considered myself a serious student of art, it was there I must make my mark. With my father's permission, I returned to Paris to study painting. I joined the studio of a master artist whom I disliked immediately. He said that my paintings did not come close to the ideals of classical beauty. I argued that was never my intention, actually just the opposite. I met other young artists like Auguste Renoir, Alfred Sisley, and Frédéric Bazille. They too were looking for a new and different way to paint. They became my comrades in art, in life, and indeed in poverty. But to be poor was also to be free, free to paint as we pleased. I do admit it was important for an artist to gain acceptance into the Salon, the only official government exhibition in Paris. Its members were artists from the French Academy, who believed that innovative art was unacceptable, dangerous to society. They sought artists who produced large paintings with perfectly blended brush strokes. They favored subject matter from mythology, or a glorified historical battle, or biblical scenes. By age 26, few of my paintings had been accepted by the Salon, which was an artist's only real hope for sales or commissions. So I tried to paint something more restrained and bourgeois. In 4 days, I completed a life-size painting of a woman in a green dress. Not only was the painting accepted, but people noticed it and talked of it. Unfortunately, notoriety did not translate into a single sale. The woman in the painting was my favorite and most patient model, and my future wife, Camille Dossieux. I painted her often and with great love. A few years later, tired of having our paintings rejected or even judged, a group of us decided to create an alternative space for artists to show. A place for artists who had been refused acceptance into the Salon. Artists must take risks. Art must have its brave soldiers. We held our first exhibition in April 1874, when I was 34 years old. Our group consisted of Renoir, Sisley, Pissarro, Cézanne, Degas, Berthe Morisot, the only woman in our group, my old teacher Boudin, and myself. Unfortunately, the number of paintings on the walls was greater than the number of viewers. One of my paintings caused quite a stir. A small work, which I called Impression Sunrise. I painted the scene freely, simplified in form, using a brush loaded with pigment. One art critic ridiculed our work, calling the paintings unfinished sketches, slapdash, and impressionistic. He meant this as an insult, but our paintings were impressions, our immediate response to what we saw. The show was a financial disaster, and yet the world was now exposed to a new, fresh approach to art. No longer was art expected to elevate the soul of the viewer or teach a moral or historical lesson. Art existed simply to delight the eye. In the next few years, I was able to sell some of my paintings through a Parisian art dealer. Tired of city life, I left Paris for good. In 1883, I found a home in a quiet village, about 40 miles northwest of Paris, in the village of Giverny. My house was a pink stucco building with green shutters, and there was plenty of room to create my own wonderful flower garden. I designed the gardens with a painter's eye. I dug, I planted, I weeded, and I watered. What I needed most was flowers, always, always. From then on, the gardens became my joy and my sole subject matter as a painter. A short time later, I bought a swampy piece of land next to my property and transformed it into an oriental water garden, complete with an arched bridge, Japanese style. I no longer thought of my paintings as landscapes. My flowers and lily pond were a constant source of inspiration. I felt an aggressive sense of energy. My brushstrokes lengthened into sweeping movements of color. I needed no horizon line, no outlines, no formal composition. I had never felt freer or happier. At Giverny, I was a countryman once more. My art, my life, and my gardens had merged into one. I had always trusted nature to be my mother and my guide. And I had tried to paint her like the bird sings.
Claude Monet continued to paint his beloved gardens at Giverny until he died at the age of 86. At his funeral, his old friend, Georges Clemenceau, the French premier, removed the black drapery from his coffin and pulled a floral curtain from the window. He covered the coffin, saying, "Black is not for Monet. It must be flowers." Like the Japanese footbridge over his pond, Monet's paintings became a bridge to 20th century art. In his last adventuresome works, all recognizable subject matter began to disappear. Dispensing with objective reality, the artist was free to concentrate on the expressive power of shape and color. Monet called his gardens his most beautiful masterpiece, his Garden of Eden. Welcome to the world of Claude Monet.
Please exit to your left. The next program will begin shortly.